Survivor 46 is here, and so is On Fire, the only official Survivor podcast, and we have a twist this season. The winner of Survivor 45, Dee Valladares, will be joining us every week.
We're going behind the scenes of the biggest moments, the how and the why things happen, and the strategy and analysis you can only get from someone like me, a Survivor winner.
Listen to On Fire, the official Survivor podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Get in, loser! Mean Girls is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Join Katie Heron as she meets the plastics in Tina Fey's new twist on the modern classic. Get ready for more of the rumors, backstabbing, and jokes you loved from the original movie with some fetch surprises. Rated PG-13. Wear pink and head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie Podcast.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for After Action Report number 8. If you don't know what an After Action Report is, anytime we have a guest on Cocktails in the War Room, which is my streaming video show that I film live every Tuesday night at 8:30 live on my Facebook page. The videos are always posted on Facebook and online at mistresscarrie.com after every episode. And this week on episode 115 that happened Tuesday night, January 26th, 2021, Matty Blake joined me. He's, of course, the host of the History Channel's Drilling Down and Beyond Oak Island. And he's a former WAAF DJ. And he was featured on episode 33 of the Mistress Carrie Podcast. Well, after the podcast got released, he joined us live in the War Room to answer your questions about all things supernatural, to drill down even deeper on Oak Island, and to swap some old school WAAF stories. So here's the audio of the interview. But don't forget, if you want to watch the video, just go to mistresscarrie.com. Matty, welcome to Cocktails in the War Room.
I'm glad to be here with you. Thank you.
I was getting a little nervous that you might have forgotten. Normally we have the guest on early in the show, but I know because of Oak Island, you wanted to wait. I told everybody in the War Room already what the reservation was, is that you don't want to compete with your own show.
Yeah, it's a little bad for, and I've started live tweeting during the Beyond episodes, and I think history kind of likes that. So I wanted to keep that going too.
So for anybody that doesn't know, that's here in the War Room, anybody that doesn't know, Matty and I worked at WAAF multiple times together over the years. He used to host afternoons with Rocco, and then came back and was on Matty and Nick. And then all the while, you've been doing other stuff. You're a stand-up comic. We talked a lot about it in episode 33 of the podcast. But you ended up on this Oak Island journey, and now there's spin-offs to the spin-offs. So originally there was The Curse of Oak Island.
Correct.
And then Drilling Down is the companion show, which is the show that you host. So what's the difference between The Curse of Oak Island and Drilling Down for anybody that hasn't watched it?
Yeah. So real quick, like Drilling Down was basically Talking Dead is for Walking Dead. Right. And so I did that for 5 seasons, basically. The main show, The Curse of Oak Island, has gotten so huge that it has now spawned a spinoff called Beyond Oak Island. So Oak Island is its own treasure hunt story. It's a real story going on. It's a real life treasure hunt. Beyond Oak Island is us looking at other treasure mysteries around the world, because what started to happen, Carrie, is people started presenting to me and to Rick and to Marty and producers like, hey, I've got this thing. I think there's treasure in my town. I've been searching it for years. I got 20 years of research. So we're getting all these messages going, well, this could be a show. You know what I mean? So, and it has become one. So we got nailed by COVID. We only got 8 episodes into season 1, but I'm very confident there's going to be a season 2 of Beyond Oak Island, and we'll tell more treasure stories.
People are commenting on your very cool studio lighting. Kevin Barbary had very cool mood lighting in his studio. When he joined us here in the War Room, he had like this cool purple lighting. And so people are commenting on your big, sexy lighting that you have in there as well.
Well, I got to thank my 15-year-old son, Max. This is that LED lighting that kids have in their rooms now.
Oh, it's like on a ribbon, right?
Strip. Yes.
Yeah.
He got some for Christmas. He had some left over. So I brought it down to my studio and I control it with my phone. So I can actually, hold on.
Oh my God.
As
this
we
is
talk.
what Kevin Barbary was doing too. It just goes to show you guys that it doesn't matter. See, that's what Kevin was doing. Like, you get all these colors. It just goes to show you, it doesn't matter how different everyone was that was at AAF. We were all very different people with different things, but there are so many similarities that brought us all together, and you're proving it right now. Kevin Barber would be so proud of your in-studio lighting.
You know, I have a funny Kevin Barbary story. Well, I have many. Most I would never tell here. But I met him, again, we alluded to this on the podcast. Like, I knew Greg Hill before Greg was famous.
Yeah.
Because he was my brother's friend. And I remember being at one of Greg's parties and I hadn't met Kevin. Kevin had just started working with Greg. It was like when he flew out here to do the show,
came
basically.
Up from like North Carolina,
North
right?
Carolina.
Yeah.
And he was doing an impression, which I've stolen over the years many times. He was in the corner of the room, and I wonder if Kevin would remember this, actually. He was doing Harrison Ford in the movie, when he's the prisoner, the remake, Man with the One Arm. You know, The Fugitive.
The Fugitive, yeah. Otherwise, there's like a 10-second delay in the comments, and then like 5 seconds, people are going to be like, the fucking Fugitive, Carrie. What are you and Matty on dope?
Sorry.
What are you doing? Yeah.
So he's in the corner doing, as you can imagine Kevin only doing, he's doing the exchange, but he's doing both voices of the guy going.
Which
like,
he was amazing that he could do both characters in a conversation at the same time and switch back and forth like it was nothing.
Amazing. So he's like doing the French doctor, like, Richard, my friend. And he's like, there was a man with a prosthetic arm. You find that man. And I'm going like, oh my God, he sounds exactly like them.
It's
and I just like gravitated over to him in the corner and we were like best buds, like doing voices and doing our whole thing. So
he came on the podcast and on Cocktails in the War Room. And, you know, I love the fact also that all of us have these amazing like home studios now. Do you have a name for yours? Because you know I call mine MCHQ. What do you call yours?
Matty Road Studios. I even have, I don't have I'm not good with technology really, but someone took a Photoshop of the Beatles crossing Abbey Road and they took out George's face and put my face in it. So that's like my avatar of my Matty Road Studios.
Have you ever gone to England? Have you ever gone to London and crossed Abbey Road?
I haven't done it.
Okay, so I did it, I think, like 7 years ago, and it's really strange, right? So there were some British soldiers that I met in Afghanistan, and they had always said, like, if you ever come to England or whatever, like, let us know, we'll hook you up. So one of them, him and his wife, picked me up at the airport. I had a 14-hour layover in London. And they were like, we're going to take you around London all day. So we got a day pass for the tube or the underground, whatever they call it. And we just ran around London. I had this whole list of what I wanted to do. And I was like, guys, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to make you do the Abbey Road thing. Like, you don't have to do it, but I want to do it. So you have to take me. Yeah. We got off at that stop. And even like all the tchotchkes, the little stand at that stop of the underground is all Beatles stuff. Sure. And then you come around and it's like a residential like neighborhood, and the corner where that crosswalk is a little harrowing. Like, it's a little dangerous. And this
busy.
Was really early on a Sunday morning.
Huh.
Because I had taken the red eye, basically. I had left Boston late night or whatever. And then by the time I got there, it was really early in the morning. And people like coming home from church, like, don't give a fuck. Like, they are so sick of people being in that crosswalk. You would think they would stop and let you take it. No. There were dozens of people waiting in line to take pictures in the crosswalk first thing on a Sunday morning. And then Abbey Road Studios is right there at the intersection.
Sure.
And the whole stucco wall outside of the studio, people just write all over it. So of course I'm like, Mistress Carrie was here on the wall at Abbey Road Studios. And then there were these guys with acoustic guitars. It was like a band, and they were doing acoustic versions of Beatles songs a cappella, like out on the street. And it was this amazing vibe because everybody that was there for the same reason, because they just love the Beatles.
I love it.
So you have to
Yeah.
Have to, because I know what a big Beatles fan you are.
Yeah.
You have to just go. I have the picture of like me. Of course, I was by myself, so I'm like walking across Abbey Road and
so
I took
great.
pictures signing the studio. And it's really cool to just go there. And recently on the Sit Rep, which is the headline podcast that I do, Paul McCartney's daughter, the one that he had with Linda, is actually doing a documentary on Abbey Road Studios.
Oh,
and
wow.
She's going to put the documentary together, which I cannot wait to see. And the whole history of the studio and everything, just the people that have recorded there. Nuno Betancourt was on the podcast recently, and he talked about recording in those studios and just legendary.
It's funny. I took my son Max when he was younger in my New York City years. I took him because he's become a huge Beatles fan. And I took him to, the Dakota building. And then we crossed the street at 73rd, I guess. And it's where
the Strawberry Fields and the
exactly,
Imagine Memorial
the
is.
Imagine. Yeah. And he only said to me, he goes, I don't like it, Daddy. I don't like it because I didn't even do the math. It's where Lennon was killed. And Max knew that. I explained it to him. And he goes, I don't like being here. I was like, wow. He was so sensitive at that age to this, hero band of his and the guy getting shot there. And I didn't even think about at his age, that would be disturbing to him.
Weird.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you look at any kind of memorial, right? You look at the amazing memorial and the museum at Ground Zero. And on one hand, it's breathtaking and beautiful and all of those things. But on the other hand, you're literally standing on the ground where it happened.
Yeah.
And it's there's like a mix of emotion there because it's where, like when you go to a cemetery to go visit a loved one, it's not where they died.
Right.
So it's like this place where you're just going to visit them. But when you go to a memorial that's on the ground where it happened, I can totally see how Max would.
Yeah, he kind of.
That was weird.
Well, it's powerful moments like the Titanic. And then you can have a producer just go and go,
then you could have Stiz, who's been in Cocktails in the War Room as well, be like, I touched the Titanic, yo!
I remember him like outside we had a great trip, Nick, me and him in Vegas. It was one of the highlight memories of my time, that second time at AF. And he's got like the sweatpants pulled up, over his shins, like he does that thing, and he's like ripping butts outside the casino. And he's like, yo, I touched the Titanic. I'm like, don't say another word. We're talking about this on the air. We're talking about this on the air tomorrow.
Oh my God. Producer Mike says, can't wait to see the Peter Jackson doc, all of that unreleased video footage coming on Disney Plus.
Trailer looks incredible.
Producer Mike, by the way, is Mike Saya, who came to Afghanistan with me, that used to work for us with us at Entercom.
Awesome.
Let's see. Terrence says, I want to see Abbey Road, Battersea Power Station, Astoria, David Gilmour's houseboat, Britannia Row Studios. Like there's a whole, you could literally just be a travel agency and just specialize in like music tourism.
Seriously. That's a great idea, actually.
For nerd people like us that like want to really, that's why I love the Sonic Highways documentary that the Foo Fighters did. Remember that record that they did?
Yes.
And it was like on HBO, and it was every track of that record got made in a legendary recording studio around the country.
On the board, he had like the soundboard used, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And collaborated with famous musicians from that town. And like that is still one of my favorite albums of all time because it was so historically interesting to see them working in these studios and to hear the outside influence of other artists on what the Foo Fighters would sound like.
Yes.
Just really cool.
Incredible. Incredible. That history is just awesome.
Let's see. Sean says, I took a day trip to the 9/11 memorial on 9/11/2011, and I had a wicked migraine at the time. It was pretty rough. Like people talking about like going and visiting these places, it can have a profound effect on you. Physically, it can affect you, Ed says, I met Matty years back when he was on the radio with Rocco, so he says hello.
Hi.
Amanda says, that's a great idea. I would dig that. Travel for music places only. A lot of New Yorkers don't and won't go to the memorial. Still too painful, says Melissa. Brianna agrees with me that was a great album from the Foo Fighters. So one of the reasons that I love having people that were on the podcast come into the War Room is that everybody's had a week now to listen to your episode. And as good of a job, using the bunny air quotes, that I think that I do in my interviews with people. I know that when people listen to the podcast episodes, it always leaves them with questions that I didn't ask. And so I love it when people come in the war room, because just like the text line that we had in the AAF studio, I can get these messages from everybody that's joining me in the war room right now in real time so that they can ask questions. So if you guys have questions for Matty, if you have questions that I didn't ask in the podcast, if you want him to elaborate more on stuff with Oak Island or any of the other paranormal stuff that he loves. Did you see that the Lizzie Borden Inn is for sale?
Mm-hmm.
$2 million price tag.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about like tourism for places that would skeeve you out to go. Like you literally a bed and breakfast where a pair of grisly murders took place historically. Like creepy.
Yeah. That's not far from me where I am, by the way, in Fall River. Yeah, that's actually that's another place Stiz went to and broke rules of what they asked you not to do. He did something, I can't remember what it was, but he went there. He's like, yo, I went there, and we like whatever he did. He took a picture in the wherever he wasn't supposed to be.
Melissa wants to know if I was able to fix all of the echo problems from your episode. No, there was still, can still hear it a little bit if you listen to the episode. I was able to get most of it out, but there's a few places where there was this weird echo. And you and I were talking about it when we recorded the episode, that there was like this phantom echo that I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. So no, Melissa, but I got your email about it and I appreciate it. Atwood says, oh, it's Atwood. I went to high school with him. Hi. When I first moved to San Antonio, I was taken on a tour of the Selena shrines around town, and it was awesome. Talk about music tourism. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, where would you like to go, Carrie? Like, I would like to see, I can never say it. What's the mansion where Led Zeppelin recorded that? Bonnier? I can't say it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they recorded that record. I'd love to go stand in, because in the documentary, It Might Get Loud, Paige goes back there and stands in the little room where John Bonham laid down the drum lick to when the levee breaks. Which
is one of the greatest.
Oh, can you imagine standing there?
That song may have the greatest kick drum in recorded rock and roll. Like John Bonham's kick drum in that song is perfect. It's literally perfect.
Oh my God.
There's
maybe
so many of those studios too. Like, didn't Trent Reznor rent out the mansion where the La Bianca murders took place, the Manson murders, and they recorded there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I don't think they knew that. They just, like, if you look at, I think there was an interview or something with Trent Reznor about the Downward Spiral. Like, I don't think they realized that that's what that house was. And then they found out afterwards and they were like, okay, fuck it. And it like, I think Slipknot might have recorded there as well.
Holy God.
Matty, do you think that is really on Oak Island for treasure, Aztecs? Like, Amanda wants to know what you think.
I mean, I've come to the belief, and I might have said this in the podcast, so forgive me if I'm being repetitive, but I've come to the belief that it's not what we call temporal wealth, that it's not gold, silver, although that might have been buried by people subsequently who, when Oak Island got the reputation it got as being a place where there's treasure, it makes sense that people might hide treasure there. But you're talking historically, when people hide temporal wealth like that, it's 10 feet, maybe. Right? You know where it is. You're not going to dig any more than 10 feet. Try to dig a hole 10 feet. It's hard.
Yeah. And
right?
do it 400 years ago.
Correct.
When you didn't have a bulldozer to help you.
Correct. Based on some of the clues this team has found and the depth and massiveness of the works, I believe it is something to do with either a cultural group of documents or a religious artifact from antiquity. That's what I am convinced of. And I have that's all I'll say.
Terrence and a bunch of other people have said Headley Grange, which is this where you're talking about.
Thank you.
And Richard Fitz Jr. says that the drum room there is all about the height of the room, which is why the drums sounded so good.
Yes, that's what Paige was saying.
Are so smart.
Way to go, people.
Brianna says, I wonder if they are keeping Lizzie's other house. Those owners have both of their houses. I don't know.
Interesting.
The other Brianna says the new Night Stalker documentary on Netflix is fucking insane. So good. I I know basic white girl like the serial killer documentaries. Actually, what's really funny is that Tyler Connolly from Theory of a Dead Man and I, because he's on this week's episode, talked about the Night Stalker documentary in our interview this week. So it's really funny that you brought that up. Penny says, I saw it, one of the few that really wigged me out, talking about the Night Stalker. Let's see. Rebecca says, I've really enjoyed following Oak Island. Sean says Geraldo thought there was something at Al Capone's vault also. That's the one thing about Matty is that you've always been very headstrong in your beliefs, and you also allow yourself to get your balls busted about it, and you don't care. Like, it doesn't bother you. We used to like wreak havoc on you on the daily at the radio station, and you're just like, whatever, man, it's not going to make me not believe it.
Well, I mean, like, isn't that one of the greatest sayings of all time is take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself seriously, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm earnest. You know, we talked about it again on the podcast, not to be repetitive, but it's like my enthusiasm is all real. I got the job because one of the requirements was that you love this type of stuff.
Right.
And so it's real. Like when I go like, holy crap, you found that? Like that's all real. And I think it translates, but it's like, I don't care. I don't think that I'm anything like as soon as you start taking yourself too seriously, I think that shows up on camera too. And people are just go click.
Danielle wants to know what's the best place that you've seen paranormal activity, because you've gone to a lot of like crazy places and you know, I mean, outside of Oak Island, obviously, because some of the things that you've seen there.
Yeah, Oak would be the answer, but I'll try a non-Oak answer, and that is I went to a Bigfoot conference. I spoke at a Bigfoot conference.
Of course you did.
And it was in Salt Fork, Ohio, at a huge convention center where there's been tons of it's a very squatchy country.
How many people were in Ohio at a Sasquatch convention?
Hundreds.
Besides
I don't know.
Hundreds of people.
Oh yeah. They take, you know, one guy said to me, and a lot of guys say this, but one guy said to me one day, I said, well, you know, you're a believer. He said, no, I'm an experiencer. I'm not a believer. And he got really intense. And this is a military guy too. He told one of the greatest stories that night. He told a story about his son. So this guy was a non-believer, worked in the woods, had a sighting, and it changed his life. It fundamentally changed his life. And he's like, it's cost me. It's cost me money. It's cost me friends. It's cost me relationships.
Think he's crazy.
Yes. And he just won't stop. And they're like, will you stop going out in the woods on the weekends? He's like, no. So his son was one of the kind of non-believers. And I won't go into it, but he told the story about his son who was in the National Guard, had a weekend off. They went on a squat, and he goes, and we saw one go right up the ridge, right by us. He goes, and my son, who's this big, tough 21-year-old National Guard, he said he went just like this. And he went in on himself and wouldn't move. He wouldn't move on the path. He went into shock. And he's like, we had to push him down the path. And he said, never since that day, he wants nothing to do with it, but he'll say, Dad, you were right. I doubted
the shit out of him.
It scared. He couldn't move. He went. And when he told that story at night in the woods at Salt Fork Ranch, I was like, what are we doing? But we saw some weird stuff. We felt we were being tracked. And we saw anomalous lights. We saw an orange orb, which my former partner, Ronnie Blank, will tell you is very common. It's split off into two red lights that look like eyes. Now, this is in the deep forest. If we went back the next day to see, and if anyone had been back there with like night vision goggles or something, we would have heard it, because you couldn't even put your hand in front of your face without hitting branches and making noise. This thing was going like at about our eye level, a little taller, and just cutting across us, these weird lights. So if anyone can tell me what that was, I'd be...
Gina says, oh my God, Vanessa needs to go to that conference. So one of my neighbors is a Sasquatch fanatic. like her kids buy her Sasquatch PJs, and like she's one of those people. And you were just talking about Ronnie LeBlanc.
Yeah.
He's from Leominster and wrote a book called Monsterland about an area in Leominster that has a history of paranormal activity. And you've come to Leominster multiple times.
Yeah.
And gone and seen. So that's where I was born and raised, obviously. So what kind of weird stuff have you seen in my hometown?
We had some weird events in the Monsterland forest. One of which I know, I swear to God, this sounds like a movie or something, but if I didn't live through it, I wouldn't believe it either. But we were on a day hike just to get the lay of the land to figure out maybe where we would go squatching one day. I'm with three really experienced dudes. One's a former park ranger, and Ronnie knows those woods like anything. And we got caught in a afterwards, we didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't like lost time like UFO people describe. But in a sense, it kind of was. It was a very Blair Witchy thing. We kept going in circles. And at a certain point, it was getting cold. It was wintertime. It was freezing anyway. It was getting dark. And I go, hey, guys, like, you're the experts. And the park ranger guy's going like, I don't. He was laughing, but he was like scared. He's like, I don't know what's going on. This is weird. We got lost in Monsterland and we saw some weird tree bends and we all had a weird feeling. And we were in the truck that night. Everyone kind of got quiet and like no one was laughing about it. We were like, that was, I don't know what happened. Like Ronnie's been back there. He knew exactly where we were. And yet we kept kind of circling. It was very bizarre.
Monsterland is a place, like it's been called that since my parents were in high school and earlier than that, because it was a place that for decades people have talked about the weird stuff that happened in that area, which is, I mean, that's why they call it Monsterland, because it's weird out there.
Sure is.
People are talking about the, is it the Danvers State Hospital?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The mental hospital. Yeah. Very haunted.
The Freetown Triangle.
Yeah. And the Bridgewater Triangle is they're doing a scripted TV show about the Bridgewater Triangle. Well, loosely based on it. It's a scripted show, but, and all the high strangeness there. That's a lot of weird stuff.
That's what William's talking about, the Bridgewater Triangle right now.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
To go back to Oak Island, because we talked about it a little bit in the podcast, but and you talked about, do you have your cross on?
I do.
Can you show everybody the cross that we talked about in the podcast?
Yeah, great idea. I never not wear it, if that tells you anything. So this is a replica of what we call now, we call it Drayton's cross, because Gary Drayton is the metal detector that found it. So what's unique about this item, the real one is bigger than this. It's about that much bigger and that much wider.
Looks like something Tobias Forge from Ghost would wear. Or Ozzy. Yeah.
The real one's made of lead. It's super heavy. This is just a silver replica. It's an exact replica, but it's smaller. And what makes it unique, again, I'll do this in 30 seconds, but what makes it unique is that the Knights Templar were long rumored to be involved with the Oak Island treasure, but it was something that seems so outlandish. First of all, we don't know for sure that Knights Templar could have come here, even though there's evidence that Vikings might have come here a long, long time ago.
Especially that part of like Nova Scotia, where it would have been one of the first pieces of land you hit.
Correct.
Crossing the Atlantic.
Correct. So long story short, it all seems like kind of fantasy and fun. And it's like, well, what would the Knights Templar be hiding? And then this team finds human bones of Middle Eastern descent that are very old. And then this team finds parchment paper and leather bookbinding at depth, 160 feet at depth. And that one expert said, this is of a very important medieval document. This would have been this type of paper and this type of leather bookbinding. If that's what it is, what I think it is, it would be for something very special. And with that as the backdrop, this guy, Gary Drayton, finds this lead cross on the beach. This almost exact cross is carved into the wall in a Templar prison in Dome, France. They test the lead of this cross that was found on Oak Island. It comes from a 14th century mine, a mine that closed in the 14th century. And that's where the lead came from, right near the prison, the Templar prison in Dome, France. So yes, you could say it's all coincidence. Yes, you could say someone dropped the Templar cross there at some point, I guess. It's authentically old. It's been tested. But to me, that was just proof of what I had begun to suspect, that it was something involving a religious artifact. And when they found that, to me, it was just, and then everyone said it's going to turn out to be a replica or postmodern or not old. And I just knew in my heart and my bones, I'm like, this thing is special. And Gary, the guy who found it, was an expert in medieval artifacts because he treasure hunted in England all those years. He goes, no, mate, this is old. You watch. And when the testing came back, it was like, I felt like I won the lottery. I was like, yes, Templar, baby.
So we talked about this in the podcast a little bit about treasure hunters, and we talked about the Titanic and how somebody's got to pay this expensive cost of all this excavation and all of this treasure hunting. And obviously people do it not only for the bragging rights. If you are like James Cameron helped, the guy that made Titanic, helped to fund the explorers that found the Titanic. So it's like when you're rich the way that he is from the Terminator movies and all that stuff, it's like a badge of honor that you go down in the history books, but also how much money those wrecks are worth, how much money these treasures are worth. If you find a Spanish sunken ship with millions and millions of dollars of gold in it and all of that stuff, like there's definitely money to be made. So this guy that you're talking about, what was his name again? The guy that found the cross?
Gary Drayton, the metal detector.
Okay, so Gary finds this cross. Does he get to keep it? Does he own it? Who owns it? And then how do they test it without destroying it?
Yeah, so they did something called laser ablation, a term I never thought I'd know, but for this job.
It sounds like something they do at the spa. They do like ablations, like skin ablations for women at the spa.
Wait, didn't they open up Ozfest for us in like 96, laser ablation?
Dude, they're definitely, Mike Shue always has a joke on Twitter about a band, if like a fake band name and whether they played upstairs or downstairs at the Middle East. I think laser ablation definitely played downstairs, but I digress. So go ahead.
They got signed in the 90s. So yeah, basically it's a process by which they kind of use a laser to just take the most minimal sample that you can possibly take, called laser ablation. And that's how they tested it basically. But okay, so Gary doesn't
like it. It's not specific. Like if you can't give up like trade secrets about Oak Island, it's more of like who owns it when you find a treasure? Like how does it get decided?
Yeah. So there's something called the Treasure Trove Act. Because you really can't hunt for treasure in Canada. So because of the historical importance and cultural importance of Oak Island to that area, they have worked out a deal with the treasure hunters, the modern day treasure hunters now on Oak Island, Rick and Marty Lagina and their team. Rick and Marty Lagina own virtually everywhere they search. If they don't own that part of the island, they have an agreement with the person who does, because people own lots. They own most of it. So they can dig as they want. Now, there's an archaeologist on scene. He's become part of the team. His name is Laird Niven. He's basically the eyes of the state, if you will. And here's how it breaks down. If they find gold or silver or something like treasure, they can actually keep that. Rick and Marty can keep that. If it's something of cultural significance, like what they believe is an archaeological site, all work must stop. And Laird has to come in and say, okay, we need to stop digging. We need
like
to excavate this archaeologically. Yes.
Structure.
Or even an old house. Yes. So the government almost cares more about that than treasure, Now, part of their agreement is they give a lot of artifacts to the government and it goes on display in their interpretive center, their museum, if you will. So like you can go, there's an Oak Island Interpretive Center on Oak Island. When you get there, it's in the parking lot. You can see the cross on display.
Oh, that's where it is? Because I was going to ask you where it was.
Yeah. So it goes to, the greater good of the Oak Island team, because it creates interest and things like that. But, if Rick and Marty pull up a treasure chest of gold, they can keep what they want and give what they want. I think the state gets a percentage of that, but it's theirs. It's their land.
What else besides the cross and like you were just talking about it, like those pieces of paper and that like the leather bound book, what else has come out of there that's made you go, holy shit?
Yeah. Like, pottery, very ornate pottery at depth. The human bones were huge because what are they doing under there? Especially Middle Eastern human bones, one male, one female. Even the wood, everyone always jokes like, oh, they're pulling up more wood on Oak Island, but the wood tells the story. That's the process. So it's like, what are giant pieces of beam that predate the finding of the money pit in 1795? What are those doing at depth? You know what I mean? So like you're going down and you're finding wood and you can date it.
Right. It's carbon dating, right? Is that what they call it? Yeah.
Yes. And dendrochronology you can do. If there's rings, you can date it that way. But you're seeing wood that is post-discovery of the money pit. There's searcher. These are searchers who are down there and we're finding their remnants. But when you start to pull up stuff that predates that, you go, all right, this could be the original depositors. There's something called the Chapel Vault. This is the last thing I'll say that was so exciting. And this is before my time, but they hit with a drill. So they're at depth. Oak Island nuts are going to kill me on this. I want to say 165, I think was the depth. I could be wrong on that. I have a lot of depths in my head. Maybe 195, 165. Anyway, they hit, they're going through Earth. They're bringing up core samples. They hit wood, very old wood, a layer of cement, a layer of fiber, like I think it was coconut fiber. That might have been coconut fiber too, but I'm not sure. There's coconut fiber found on the beach at Smith's Cove. And then it drops a few feet as if it hit a void, and they pull the drill bit up. It's got gold flecks on it. So if you can think about it, they basically hit a box, wood, cement, it drops, meaning they hit a void. And then at the bottom of the void, it comes up with gold flecks on it. So they try to get that box. They call it the chapel vault now they think they just pushed it further underground because everything flooded. Oh. And they couldn't get to everything. But that existed. That was a discovery. So it's like that chapel vault is down there somewhere. So this team has pulled up things that they go, is this chapel vault? Oh my God, I've been there on site when they're like, this is like what is this wood? And like, are we on the chapel vault right now? And your heart rate just, I get the chills just thinking about it. The possibility of this team pulling up something like that. It's one of these days, any one of those core samples could pull it up.
Now, how far do you go with, there's a lot of talk about conspiracy theories right now because, people, depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on, and you talk about QAnon and kind of all of this stuff. So there has been a lot of talk in mainstream media about conspiracy theorists and what is it that attracts people to conspiracies and what makes you believe them. So how far does your conspiracy theory spectrum go? Like, did we really land on the moon? Was JFK assassinated by the Cubans or the mob? Like, was it a cover up? Was Johnson in on it? Like, there's a lot. There's a lot there.
God, you're such a great interviewer. I've never been asked that question. And I don't think of things in terms of conspiracy theories like that because I'm a very non-political person. And those usually, the phrase conspiracy theory kind of connotes politics almost a little bit, right?
Yeah, and it's not meant to be a political conversation. So I'll give you an example. Last year I went to Dallas.
Yep.
And I went with a bunch of friends. It was just always a place talking about going to a place where a grisly murder happened, right? A tourist place.
Yeah.
And I went to Dealey Plaza.
Been there. Done it.
And it's a lot smaller and more compact than I think I get. Like just from the Zapruder films and the images, the historical images that we have, I couldn't believe how much smaller it was in person.
Yes.
There's the blocks on the street, which is very morbid about when the bullets actually hit JFK before they went under the underpass.
Yes, they have like a thing right on the street, like a peg in there.
I took a picture like standing in the box. And as I'm doing it, like everybody was doing it, but as I'm doing it, I felt weird doing it because I was like, this is where someone died. Like, this is where our president was assassinated. Like, it was weird again. And then I don't know if it happened when you were there, but were all of those conspiracy guys there?
Yep. They have signs. They have tapes. They have, who I went with? Heather Gersten from radio.
No way.
Remember Heather Gersten? Yeah. We went together on a morning radio trip. But anyway, go ahead.
So they were there talking about, now these guys have published books. They have evidence. They give a very compelling argument about the conspiracy behind it, about how there were more bullets found than Lee Harvey Oswald could have fired, that there was more than 3 bullets, that there were ricochets into the bridge abutment, and that it would have been easier for him to take a head-on shot before they took the corner and then took the shot almost as if JFK was like, they go into this whole thing. And I was like, between that and the Kevin Costner movie, I was like, you might be swaying me. Like, they make some compelling arguments.
Yeah. I think I could answer it this way and say that the stuff that thrills and excites me tends to more be on the, I would say, spiritual side of the ledger. Gotcha. Those are the questions that excite me. So I'm kind of like you in terms of human beings. I feel like most of those conspiracies, like, most agencies don't know what the other one's doing. And it would take so much coordination to do something like that.
Well, like the people that believe 9/11 was an inside job, right? And it's like, to pull something like that off, I just have a really hard time imagining enough people being willing to go in on it and that it never got out.
Right.
Because something like that just always gets out.
Right. And to answer your question, that's a great example. If there was a discussion going on about 9/11 and if it was an inside job or not, I would walk out of that room, but I would run into the room that talked about anyone who is a victim of 9/11 maybe contacting their loved ones from the other side now. That room I'd stay in for 5 hours.
Yeah.
You with me? So that's where I stand.
Yeah. Well, I think, maybe for you and I think for a lot of people, the conspiracies that you're talking about also lend themselves to answering life questions about what happens after we die.
Definitely.
Which is the
yes.
oldest question in humanity, and the question that, no disrespect to anyone's organized religion, but at the end of the day, none of us really know.
True.
One of the only people that I know of that has any kind of compelling argument for me is Tommy Vext, because he died and was brought back to life. And he had a death experience. And we talked about it. He was on episode 3 of the podcast, and we talked about it a little bit. And it's like, I don't know if I know anyone else that actually died besides Nikki Sixx, that was declared dead and came back. Yeah. Those people, I'll sit down and listen, because it's like, I can't tell you you're wrong. I didn't die.
Right. NDEs, as we call them in the paranormal biz.
Of course you have an acronym for them.
I have a book of them. I have a couple books on NDEs. Fascinating. They've done scientific studies, skeptics, doctors, and they've actually done things as benign as like put something on the roof of the lights above their operating theater. And when someone claims a near-death experience, they've tested them, and the people and supposedly in some of these studies, the people passed. Oh, you had a tic-tac-toe board up there and there were 2 X's, and where only you could see if you were floating above it. I mean, it's really stunning.
How they've weighed a human body and then weighed it, like the weight of your soul, what is it, like
0.6 ounces or something?
Yeah, that it like has an actual measurable weight.
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff is interesting.
I love it. It's Kevin Burns, the producer who hired me, who just passed away. Unfortunately, I was crushed. But he was one day, we were talking about Oak Island, and he did Ancient Aliens. He created Ancient Aliens, that show, and he created The Curse of Oak Island. He's this mad genius, and he just goes like, one day we were doing something, and he just goes like, well, both these shows are about the search for God. You know that, right? And it's not just about treasure, and it's not just about talking about aliens. It's the search for God. It's the search for meaning. People searching, and I was like, wow, he's right. To your point, it's like we're looking for answers.
Yeah.
And as I said in your podcast, if that's true, what else could be true?
So Terrence said Leon Wilkeson from Lynyrd Skynyrd, that was in the plane crash in 1977, was dead for 2 minutes, came back. Gary Rosington of Skynyrd was dead for 1 minute and saw his own body, he said.
Yes, that's a really common thing. They see themselves getting worked on. They can tell the medical professionals what they did medically. Bob Woodward, I think, the journalist, not Woodward and Bernstein, but there's a young journalist.
He was the one that got hit by the IED when he was in bed with troops overseas.
Correct. Thank you. And he saw the medics working on him from down the street. He was like, I floated out of my body. He had an NDE, and he told the medics, the Army medics, like, here's what you did to me. Here's what you said. And they're like, dude, you were dead. He had his head got blown up.
Yeah. He has a foundation that helps injured veterans. And
look up his NDE. It's incredible.
If you look at, they had to like put a metal plate in his head because he lost part of his skull. I mean, his injuries were horrific.
That's right. And he watched the guys working on him. Incredible.
So it's like, how do you tell that guy he's wrong?
Well,
did you see Soul, the Pixar movie? The
no,
brand new one?
I did not.
It's fantastic.
Is it? I got to check.
One thing that's really crazy is that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross do the score.
Wow.
So
Trent Reznor for Pixar. Did you ever think you'd live to see that day?
So go 1994, I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal. 2020, Disney Pixar film. Like,
amazing.
It's unbelievable. But the movie, first of all, is beautiful. Like the animation on it is beautiful. But it deals with what we're talking about, is that where the person's spirit goes, and then like fighting to get back into your body. Like, I'm not giving spoiler alerts away, but if you have Disney Plus and you haven't watched Soul, it's fantastic. It's all about love of music as well. But the way that the animators kind of imagined what these beings, these energy beings in the other world might possibly look like in order to animate them, Some of them look like Picasso drawings in this really weird way. It's beautifully animated. And the fact that Trent Reznor did the score is crazy. But that movie deals with what we're talking about. Gina says Soul was excellent. Eric says it was awesome. I need to watch that movie, says Brianna. Sean keeping us up to date with the Bruins said overtime win with 10.9 seconds. Fantastic. Woo! Eric said kids loved it. Shannon says movie was great. Eric said it's all about jazz music, which is great. So it's really cool. And I think just because of exactly what kind of we're talking about, I think even though like you're a grown ass man that you could watch a cartoon like without kids around. And I think you would really like that one because it's just it's really interesting.
Well, I'll tell you, I do that podcast with Tony Arkin. We review movies that are paranormally themed. I'm going to put that in the list, and we're going to review it.
I would 100% put it on the list.
Love it.
So that was one of the things that we talked about. Tyler Connolly from Theory of a Dead Man, who's on the podcast this week, he's got a podcast that he calls Band Meeting with Dave, one of the other guys in the band, and they interview fellow musicians and stuff. But it's really interesting, people that are getting into podcasts and like the vein. So you've done like Monsterland stuff. So talk about, because you talked about it a little bit in the podcast, in our podcast interview, but talk about this podcast, this Rated P for Paranormal podcast that you guys do and how you take a movie and kind of analyze the theme of the movie.
Yeah, it's simple. It's me and Tony Arkin, Alan Arkin's son, the famous actor Alan Arkin.
Who I love.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he's just like his dad. He's hilarious. Tony's hilarious. And so Tony's my movie expert. He grew up from his conscious memory till, now he grew up on film sets. He's a director, editor. He grew up going to all those movies with his dad. He knows movies better than anyone I know. It's like you with music. Like that's his thing. So what we do, and since I'm kind of into paranormal stuff and he is too, we take a film. So last week we did a movie, for example, that's on Amazon Prime called The Vast of Night. And it's a great new movie, and it's about a UFO sighting in a small town. So the first half of the episode, we'll talk about UFO sightings in small towns and the historical actual cases that this movie is loosely based on. And then the second half of the podcast, we talk about the movie, review it like a movie review podcast. And what's funny, Carrie, is we keep coming back to the same thing. We go, it's either we love the paranormal representation in the film and then kind of hated it as a film, or we love it as a film, but the paranormal stuff is kind of lame. It's very few times that we've gone like, paranormally, it was awesome. They did a great job, and the movie's great. It's like one usually is suffering. Right. So we've only found a few that we're like wicked thrilled about. And actually, this was one of them, this Vast of Night. We both loved it. So we will definitely put that on that's a great one. We haven't done an animated film yet.
Yeah, it's great. It's beautifully done. The animation's amazing. Jamie Foxx plays the star character. Tina Fey is the female lead, or she's not really female, like whatever the spirit or being thing
That's
is.
Awesome.
But it's really, really cool. Somebody's asking, do you ever cover NDEs on the podcast? Like, is there a podcast for just near-death experiences? That would be cool.
Probably. I would almost guarantee if it's not just about that, there's so many paranormal podcasts out there that I'm sure that's covered a lot. But we would have to find a TV show or movie that dealt with NDEs, and then we would do that. Absolutely. Everything's open. Anything we can find that deals in this stuff, we do it. Some classics. This week we're doing Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we go back to classics and we do new ones. We do a lot of streaming. There's a lot of streaming paranormal content right now. So we're trying to like run through those too, because that's what people are into.
Can you guys Google this for me quick if you're here in the war room with Matty Blake and I, because I can't, shame on me for not remembering. Corey Taylor from Slipknot and Stone Sour is getting ready to write his 5th book this year.
Oh my God.
He's a prolific writer. He's an amazing wordsmith. Like he's able, think of what you want to think of him with the mask on stage with Slipknot, but he has this way, and one of Corey's books, and I can't remember the name of it, is all about these crazy ghost sightings and things that he experienced as a kid.
Oh my God.
And this book is fantastic. So can one of you guys Google the name of this book? Because I want to make sure that I'm promoting it properly. He gave me a copy of it, and a whole chapter in this book is about how him and some of his friends broke into this house deep in the woods that everybody says was haunted and nobody lived there anymore. And like the staircases were all broken. It scared the shit out of me because he talked about like something trapping him. Like this really happened to him when he was a kid and like trapped him in this house and all this crazy weird shit happened. And it's Corey talking about how this affected him. Like this really happened to him. Yeah. And let's see, I'm waiting for somebody to comment on it. Ed says, what are your thoughts on the movie Paranormal Activity? Penny says Fire in the Sky was great. Brianna says a funny thing happened on the way to heaven, or how I made peace with the paranormal and stigmatized zealots and cynics in the process. That's the name of the book.
Holy shit. I got to read that book.
Yeah. It's, I mean,
what a great title.
Not only because you just love this kind of stuff, but because you love music.
Yes.
That knowing that this is Corey writing this book.
Yes. Good for him.
It's really, really interesting.
That's amazing. Oh my God, I got to read that book. That's like right up my alley.
Yeah.
Paranormal Activity I thought was a blast. I loved it at the time. I haven't seen it since it came out. It probably warrants a rewatch. It seemed very exciting at the time because it was one of those first movies to kind of use that style.
Yeah.
Of a home security, found footage type of thing. Not found footage, but, home security, like these type of cameras.
Right.
So it was very exciting at the time. And I thought they did a great job. There were some great jump scares, a lot of fun. That movie was a lot of fun. But, to your point about Corey, back to him, I actually did some research on, and we did episodes on my old podcast, The Artist. We called it, just because it sounded good, The Artist Alien Connection, but it's truly The Artist Paranormal Connection. And there is a long lineage of musicians and artists who claim paranormal activity. It's almost seems like more do than don't. So there's something about that side of the brain that seems
well, that's what
open.
I was going to ask. So do you think that the creative so they say it's the same, comes up on my podcast all the time, that it's the same part of the brain that masters language and mathematics is what also makes you have musical ability. So do you think that there's a certain part of the brain that's either open, that they're using a part of the brain the rest of us don't? Or like the books that I've been reading that I've referenced called A Discovery of Witches.
Oh, by the way, I saw, since you mentioned it, I've seen it on TV, that blonde lady. Oh my God. Whew. The blonde lady, she's like the blonde on the show Discovery of Witches. There's like the vampire guy and the blonde lady. She's like the witch, I think.
Yeah, she's the witch.
Ooh,
yeah, well, Matthew Good, the vampire, is
okay.
Nothing to shake a stick at. Anyway, in this trilogy of books that's based on real historical stuff woven in with the vampires, demons, and witches, demons, as they are described in this book and on this television show that's on Sundance, demons are people, they're supernatural creatures that ride the line between brilliance and madness. That the demons are the creatives.
Yeah.
So you're either this brilliant kind of artist where you're riding that crazy line a little bit, right? Like a Jimi Hendrix would have been a demon because you're outlandish with this amazing talent, but like Jimmy Page with all of his extra, like you could do podcast episodes just about Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Because he's so into the occult.
Yeah.
And then when they cross the line into the crazy, like that's the theory behind demons in this trilogy of books.
That's fascinating. I think yes, that creative side of the brain seems opened or attuned to these things. Also, there might be a little bit of it working the other way too, where whoever they are, aliens, spirits, whatever, use artists to do things. Like we found out a story, Elvis himself, who my dad described unknowing this whole thing that we're talking about. He's like, the guy was like an alien. Those are his words. He goes, when I grew up, there was, jocks, greasers, everything was segmented.
Nerds,
he goes,
like whatever.
The day, he goes, I remember it. It was like a day. Someone he appeared on Ed Sullivan. Someone had a portable 45 record player, brought it down to the playground. And he goes, and I watched greasers, nerds, all the different groups converge around this thing and listen to Hound Dog. And he goes, the next day, Everyone had their hair slick. Everyone wanted to be Elvis. We all came together around Elvis. He was like an alien. He was like superhuman. And we found out when Elvis was born, the doctor swore to this, both his parents did, a strange blue light was seen hovering over Elvis's house and cast a blue beam of light down onto where Elvis was born. That's according to the people that were there. And it goes on and on and on.
Well, that
John Lennon
into the whole thing about whether Elvis is still alive or not. Like maybe he just got beamed up to his home planet.
Beamed up. John Lennon saw a UFO and put it in a song. There's UFOs over New York, and I ain't too surprised. On and on and on. I can give you a million examples of it. So yeah, there's an artist connection to that stuff, and I'm still trying to. And not that I put myself in their class at all. But I'm not an engineer. I'm an artist on the artist side of things.
Right.
And I had a precognitive dream when I was a kid. Like I had a predictive dream. I dreamed something that came true, and it scared me so much that I actually kind of put all my books away at the time, and Bigfoot and all that stuff. It scared me. And so, yeah, I think us who are into this stuff tend to have that kind of wild side of our brain, and we're attuned to it for whatever reason. And then other people who are more practical minded don't see it.
Right.
Yes.
Well, they're the practical minded people that are always the ones that say, well, if Bigfoot's real, why don't we have video of them? Like
Correct.
why, like everybody has a high definition camera on their phone.
Right.
Why don't we have proof now? Like why hasn't it been proven?
Well, to that I would say, and what I say is we might already, because there is video evidence out there now.
Just that people write it off.
That is debated. It's debated. I'm not saying it's real, but you don't know what's real and what's not. And I feel like even if you did have a high def cell phone shot of a Bigfoot, there would be a segment of society that just went like, that's not real.
Well, technology makes it so easy to like put my head on a 19-year-old Britney Spears hot ass body and make it look like it could be real, even though we all know it's not.
Wait a second. Can you see my screensaver right now?
Hey.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, though, the Patterson-Gimlin film, and this ties back to, see how everything ties back together? The Zapruder film, the JFK film, is the most analyzed piece of footage ever.
Yeah.
Second to that is the Patterson-Gimlin film,
which
that
is
famous
the
picture.
Sasquatch.
Right. And it has not, people will tell you it has. I'm telling you, it has not. It has not been debunked. They've brought in History Channel. The one I work for did a roundtable. They brought in Dr. Jeff Meldrum. They brought in these real, incredibly intelligent people. He brought in a team of skeptic, video analysis people, primate experts. They studied this thing. They studied the musculature, and they said, I can't say it's a fake. I'm not going to say it's real, but I can't tell you that it's fake. It's yet to be debunked, and that thing has been studied more than anything. So we might already have the evidence. It's the Patterson-Gimlin film, but people just maybe don't believe it.
Yeah. It's really interesting and fascinating, and we touched on it on the podcast. If you haven't listened to Matty's episode yet, it's episode 33. It's up there now. You can totally check it out because we talk about a lot of this stuff. But one of the things that I think everyone has to admit is that everyone believes in something that can't be explained, right? You've got that grandmother or that old aunt that has that intuition that nobody can explain, or there's a thing that you have that you're superstitious about. I mean, growing up, there are people in my old Italian family that if you lost something, you say a prayer to St. Anthony and then you find it. Like, it doesn't really matter what it is. Everybody has something that they believe in that is really hard to actually scientifically prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. Every organized religion requires a leap of literal faith to believe that. So how crazy are some of these stories? Because, you know, like you can't say zombies aren't real and then celebrate Easter.
Right. That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
That's right.
Everybody has these things that they believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that your crazy ideas are the ones you choose to believe, but you can't call someone else's crazy because.
That's right. That's right. That never jived with me. Like people who I knew were religious, you know, scoffing at my UFO stuff. And I'm like, wait a second, you know, the conversion of Paul at Damascus, the road to Damascus, when Paul, who was persecuting Christians, was converted to Christianity. If you the New Testament account is he sees a bright light come down out of the sky. It blinds him where he was blinded for days. They basically describe what is we now understand to be radiation poisoning. All his people got sick that were with him. This is in the Bible. They fall on the ground, and it's, according to this account, it's Jesus. And so Paul, who was Saul, becomes Paul. He became converted. And he said, you're going to stop killing Christians, and you're going to become one, and you're going to recruit them in my name. And he did, and he became St. Paul. So it's like, that's a freaking UFO story.
Right.
Right? Semantics. It's semantics, but it is.
Right.
So it's like people who I knew were Christian would be like, oh, you're talking about UFOs again? I'm like, dude, read your Bible.
Read the Bible? Yeah.
Yeah. Read the New Testament, brother. So yeah, there's a lot of that. It's just semantics at a certain point.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting though. And like one of the things that I loved about you, like coming into work every day, like people ask me all the time about, what do you miss the most about AAF? And I think that you and I would have the exact same thing. I think anybody that worked there has the same answer, is you miss the people. You miss the people that you worked with, and that creative, open, completely spontaneous place that you would go every day, and that you never knew what I was going to walk in the room and say, and vice versa, or Mike Shue or Stiz or Hillman or LB or any of us, that we were in a place that we were literally white knuckling the roller coaster without a seatbelt on every day. And that creative environment, that spontaneity, that's what I miss the most.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if you do what we do for a living, I guess it'd be analogous to like, having a gym to work out in. It's like every day is a show. And so like, I felt like at the end of that 2 years, I'm surprised it's not Matty and Nick questions, by the way. I'm surprised people aren't hammering you with questions.
Some people are saying that they miss you guys shower beers. A lot of people say shower beers.
It was like a mental workout every day, Carrie, right? Like, and you're so sharp by the end of a week. Like you're by Friday, you're firing on all cylinders. Yeah. You do it 4 hours every day. And it's like, I do miss that. It's like a great mental workout, and that camaraderie, that everyone was a big personality, but we all fit
brought
somehow.
Something different to the, but we were similar enough that we were all kind of in the room together.
Oh, and when we would have those moments when we did do something together on the air, those were, I just remember, I can't think of an exact, but like you'd come in with me and Nick on a Thursday night on our last break.
Oh, and we would do,
and we would be
the
crying,
things we find on our iPod.
Oh,
like the
yes,
songs.
we did the bit.
Yeah.
Yes, we did the bit. What's on your eye? And we would steal songs from and say, all right, here's what Carrie has on her eye. That I just remember belly laughing on a Thursday or Friday night. Like, God, I do miss that. Yeah. I do miss that.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you just can't replicate that. You
No.
know, it's what made it such a special place. And looking back, there was always that, even though people left and new people came in, there was always enough similarity that, like, anytime a new person came in, like, first of all, we hazed the shit out of them, but they always earned their place there, and they always brought something new.
Yeah.
There was always a new skill set. There was always a new personality. I mean, even, somebody like Stiz, like this, this Chelsea hip hop kid from the hood found a way to belong in this place. I mean, he knew, or Josh Dolan is another example, like these weirdos. And I say that with all the love in the world, guys, but these weirdos that just had the strangest personality traits and quirks, and yet fit into this weird puzzle.
We had a kid, remember Alan with the beard?
Yes.
This kid, Alan, he was one of our interns, and listeners of Matty and Nick remember this, but probably like a third of our audience even got it. They're probably like, what the hell is this? But this kid was 21 years old, and he dressed like a 1920s safari explorer with the safari khakis and like a big hat, and he had a full beard, and he was like a trivia expert. He loved comic books. He's like this weird 21-year-old. So we did a monthly bit with him, or a weekly bit, I guess. It was called the Alan Questions Project. And he fired shitty trivia questions at me and Nick on like Thursday nights. And I'm just like, that is just the type of person that only AAF seemed to provide. You know what I mean?
It was just, literally pretty much everybody that's here in the war room with us kind of fits into that. You know, it's like,
we're a freak show.
Yes.
It's
totally
a freak
show.
I remember Nick, actually, we were brainstorming names for that segment with Alan. And I'm like, Alan Questions Project. And Nick just goes, and just hangs his head. He's like, we have to.
It's such an awful pun that it's necessary. It's required.
We have to, don't we? I'm like, yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. And then, of course, there's a certain age group. Like Alan probably doesn't even know.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Like Alan Parsons, doesn't even know who that is.
Which we're just like, all right, whatever. It amuses us.
Yeah, exactly. It was so good having you in the war room.
Oh, God, thank you. This is, look at him.
Come in. Did you bring a drink in with you? Or are you having a cocktail with us?
You might know my friends at Castle Island in Norwood, Mass.
Oh,
cheers. Little plug. Cheers to you. What do you got in there?
Vodka soda tonight out of my mug that I got.
That a girl.
Christmas.
You are the best auntie ever.
Best auntie ever. So
I bet you are. I know you are.
Mm-hmm.
All those kids love you.
So you got to come in the war room again. Everybody loved
All right.
it. It's that Carol goes spaz. Perfect example.
Oh, probably the ultimate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who has gone full conspiracy on Instagram. Have you been watching his Instagram? Like,
has he really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Political conspiracy. Like he's.
Oh, like QAnon stuff.
Oh, he's in. Yeah, he's all in.
All right. Well, occupy his time.
I was going to say, like, you're nobody to criticize him.
What a weirdo. Let me tell you more about Oak Island.
One of the things we always do here in the war room, and I wanted to point it out before I let you go, is when the war room started back in March, one of the things that I did every night was I would wear a different concert shirt. And I've got hundreds. Like, I never duplicated one, whatever. So I promised myself over the winter, because we're still kind of all locked in the house, that I was going to start going through my T-shirt collection, because it's shameful that the T-shirts.
You must have literally hundreds upon hundreds and upon
hundreds and hundreds. So I started digging out like crazy shirts, and I wanted to show you the one that I'm wearing tonight.
Oh my God. Wow.
So I've just been finding these like rando T-shirts, and I'm like, it's like, I can't get rid of it.
No, that one you cannot.
So old school.
That's amazing.
So good.
What did you think of the finale?
So
at the time, like, what was your thoughts? At the time,
in that moment, I was pissed. Looking back on it now, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
And I firmly believe, spoiler alert, that the ending was Tony's assassination.
Didn't someone admit that recently? Yeah. Didn't he admit it? Yeah.
But I fully believe, talking about, putting music, right?
Oh,
like an iconic song and like.
Oh my God.
But at the time, I was pissed. I hated the ending.
Sure. Yeah.
And looking back on it, especially for the pressure, right?
Thank you so much for checking out this after action report. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss anything from the Mistress Carrie Podcast. Weekly episodes come out every Wednesday. Every Monday through Friday, you get the Sit Rep, which is all of your rock news, music headlines, and entertainment info in less than 5 minutes.
When you go on their website, I do the virtual
you get the after
tour
action
of
reports.
A
huge thank you to Matty Blake for not only taking the time to be on episode 33 of the Mistress Carrie Podcast, but also for hanging out with the family as part of Cocktails in the War Room. I want to quickly put in a plug for Cameo. With Valentine's Day coming up, if you want to make a custom Valentine's Day video for the one you love or hate, just download the Cameo app and search for Mistress Carrie. And I also want to say hello to everyone with a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass on Patreon. It gives you backstage access to all things Mistress Carrie and discounted merchandise in the all-new Mistress Carrie online store.
It's so clear, isn't it now, right?
Get all the details on everything at MistressCarrie.com.
Say that I'm wrong.
The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
That the guys that came into the diner killed Tony. And it's like, I'm glad that I didn't, like, as flawed as he was as a character, I don't want to see Tony. Like, I don't want to see the 5 minutes after he gets shot.
Right.
With the kids covered in blood and Carmela freaking out. And like,
yeah. Don't need it. And also, I heard him defend it one time before he kind of admitted what it was. He said, "Look, this was a character study of a guy, right? And you wondering if they're there to kill him is his future." That's his future for the rest of his life.
For the rest of his life, yeah.
He's going to be thinking that same thing. So that's what I was showing in that moment. Whether he gets killed or not in that time is not important. It's like, this is what he has to live with.
This is his existence now, that he's looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life.
Yes,
even doing
that's
something
brilliant.
as basic as eating at a diner with his family.
Right. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome shirt. You got to keep that.
Yeah, I'm keeping it. But so it's one of the things we do in the War Room is we bust out old, like, cool vintage T-shirts. I should have told you that so you could have worn.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I have some good old concert ones I could have brought out.
I got like 10 Black Crowes shirts. I'm sure you do too.
I do. Yeah, I've got a few. It's my fault for being late.
It's okay. You can't compete with yourself on
I know.
Like, I understand that you don't want to screw up a good thing with the guys from Oak Island. Like, you don't want to lose that gig, man. It's so perfect for you. You don't want to do anything to piss them off.
Amen. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I found my place.
Well, promise me that you'll come in the War Room again.
If you'll have me, I would love it. Yeah. This is so much fun. I love it.
It is a lot of fun. And I love that everybody in the War Room, like, you know, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. We're talking about booze. We're talking about current events. We're talking about music or whatever. And then we have guests in. I just think it makes it so much fun that there's somebody else that's kind of enjoying the War Room as much as we all do. So.
Well, we're lucky to have you, Carrie, because you provide this type of content and it's just awesome. So thank you.
Well, it was awesome to have you on the podcast. Episode 33, if you missed Matty Blake. If you go to that episode, in the show notes of that podcast episode are all of the links for everything that you're doing. All of your social media links, everything to do with Oak Island, drilling down, beyond Oak Island, your podcast, they're all linked in the episode so people can find you and be able to follow everything. Is Oak Island on Netflix? Somebody asked earlier, and I want to be able to put the plug in. Do you know?
Yes, but not all the seasons are streaming. I think they're like 1 through 4 right now, and we're in. You know what I mean? There's going to be 8, so you'll be a little behind, but you can get it. It's on your if you do have cable, you haven't cut the cord yet. It's on demand. Yeah, so you'll find it.
Yeah,
I think Hulu has it too. Maybe I should know that, huh? Did you like I did kind of purple for you tonight? Did you notice that? Okay.
I'll do my LB impression and be like, just Google it, kid. Just Google it.
That's it. That's it.
Oh, man. All right, Matty. Thank you so much for checking out this After Action report. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss anything from the Mistress Carrie Podcast. Weekly episodes come out every Wednesday. Every Monday through Friday, you get the Sit Rep, which is all of your rock news, music headlines, and entertainment info in less than 5 minutes. And then, of course, you get the After Action reports. A huge thank you to Matty Blake for not only taking the time to be on episode 33 of the Mistress Carrie Podcast, but also for hanging out with the family as part of Cocktails in the War Room. I want to quickly put in a plug for Cameo. With Valentine's Day coming up, if you want to make a custom Valentine's Day video for the one you love or hate, just download the Cameo app and search for Mistress Carrie. And I also want to say hello to everyone with a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass on Patreon. It gives you backstage access to all things Mistress Carrie and discounted merchandise in the all-new Mistress Carrie online store. Get all of the details on everything at mistresscarrie.com. The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.